Black Myth Wukong is seriously a game that's one of a kind. The game has been hyped for what it feels like years now, and it's released to great reviews. It's got its own round of controversies, as usual with everything gaming nowadays. And even after beating it, I'm itching for just more content and hoping that the developers are just hard at work on at least some kind of sequel or DLC. I've been looking forward to this one for a while, and now that I've completed it, I think it's safe to say that Black Myth Wukong is one of the best releases that we've had this year, despite some minor issues that I'm going to be touching on later in the review. If you're new to the channel and you like game reviews, consider dropping a subscription, helping us out with a like. Anything helps us grow, and we're nearing that 500 mark, so I do appreciate every single interaction we get. One of the first things that I want to talk about with Black Myth Wukong is obviously the graphics. The graphics in the game don't disappoint, and if you ask me, add in that whole unique art style, the visuals here are really just one of the best and most memorable that I've seen in gaming in what feels like a while. I'm not going to talk a lot about performance because I'm going to be real with you guys, I am not a super technical channel, but I do play this one on an RTX 4080 on PC with a Ryzen 7 7800X 3D CPU. I liked what I had with performance in the game, but it honestly put my PC to the test. I ended up turning things down to high from that cinematic setting, and I went with more of like a medium ray tracing because honestly guys, I spent a lot of money on my rig and I'm going to enjoy it to the fullest. I will say though, if you do have an ultra wide, watch out, it's not fully supported, so I think that's a big L there for anyone that's on the whole ultra wide master race, which if you don't have an ultra wide, seriously invest in getting one. It's a freaking game changer. Graphically though, all the hairs, the details, the environment, landscapes, it's just awesome. Every chapter brings you to a new location, going from jungle to sand, even snow and swamp. My rig did start to suffer a little bit in different chapters and during certain boss fights, but I think the most annoying thing is going to be pop-in that constantly seems like it's happening. It wasn't too jarring, at least to me. It didn't really take me out of the experience or make me feel like they were kind of like lazy developers on this, but you know, it is something that I noticed. I'm going to talk story next, and honestly, I want to leave spoilers out of this one. It is a little confusing at first, similar to how the Souls games are, which I know a lot of people keep mentioning. You know, Souls games and this, it's really similar, but we'll talk about that later. I do think that the story does open up a bit more, and you do start understanding things after that first chapter. Without spoiling much, you do play as someone called the Descendant, who's taking on bosses in the world named Yao Guai, which I hope I'm saying right, but you start off with this crazy scene in the beginning, and you fight controlling Sun Wukong, who after losing the fight gets sealed in stone. As the Descendant, you're looking for 6 relics to free Sun Wukong. Think Voldemort Horcruxes for anyone that's Harry Potter fans here. You got 6 chapters to coincide with those 6 relics, each again with its own biome that's filled with bosses and secrets. The game's story is again a little confusing, and honestly, if you ask me, just a little weak. I don't feel like there's a lot of motivation there, and I rarely felt like I cared about what was going on, even in the cutscenes, at least until the end when you get kind of like this certain twist that you kind of see coming. I mean, it's not the craziest, but again, it's not really that good, and it's not really that bad, but I mean, it's a nice twist. When it comes to gameplay though, I think that's what holds this one up to the highest, and that's what makes it really, really fun. It's addicting, slightly infuriating at times, and I mean, there's this sense of progression throughout the game that makes it feel really, really rewarding. You're fighting enemies along a semi-linear path, think kind of God of War, but a little more limited than that. There's branches, that go left, right, and you can kind of explore those and get to chests, sometimes some crafting material, secret bosses, and even these side missions. The paths lead to a boss, and after defeating the main bosses, you're able to basically leave and go to the next chapter. Along the way, you do have those mobs of enemies, but it's really nothing too crazy, except for this horrible Shadow Realm in Chapter 3 that I was just stuck in for a while. Side missions and secret bosses do carry the chapters though, and I think it's the reason it took me so long to beat this one. I mean, I'm tapped for time, guys. I mean, I work full-time outside of YouTube, but I did my best to go through every nook and cranny looking for every little chest and every side mission, because the side missions and the side bosses are actually really, really rewarding for your character. There's an area, by the way, in Chapter 3 that you could completely miss that takes you to a hub where you can level up all your items, you can craft new ones, you can get to a blacksmith to level up your freaking gear, which a lot of people missed from what I'm seeing online. And I mean, you can even challenge that guy, and he consistently kicked my ass for some really cool items that he'll give you when you beat him. The area is something you can seriously just completely miss, and it requires going to different chapters to complete a small side mission. Combat is the focus of the gameplay, and although it does get a little repetitive early on, you do get stronger just like in all these other games, and you're able to string together some really cool combos during fights. Unlike the Souls games though, you're not losing any of your leveling material on deaths, so dying technically makes you come back stronger, so you can really just keep fighting the same enemies on the way to the boss and kind of just level up. Your character is able to learn a ton of new abilities, magical attacks as you're going through the story, and even level up basic things like health, stamina, and critical damage. You can't level everything unless you farm XP from what I'm seeing, which really isn't that serious. I mean, you don't need to just grind this game to get stronger and beat it. But the devs don't hate us here, and they're able to let you respec at any time. It's completely free, no cons. Awesome feature that I wish a lot of other games did, versus making us pay some weird price in a game to, go back on some of our decisions. To break down the combat, I think it's a little simple, but it does work. You have a light attack that you can combo into a final light attack that does a lot of damage. What happens here is your focus bar ends up charging up, and that lets you unleash a heavy attack on the enemy. You're able to stun enemies and basically dish out a lot of damage, but there's zero blocking in the game. So when an enemy tries to attack you, all you could do is dodge. Dodging costs stamina, so does attacking. So stamina and the whole management of it is actually really important early on. So you start leveling up higher. I mean, it gets to a point where I kind of stopped paying attention to it, but I was really far in the game at that point. To spice up combat, you've got these magical attacks that use your mana. The mana doesn't recharge, and the attacks are on a cooldown to avoid spamming. You can use something called an immobilize, which is what I think is clutch. There's a transformation that helps kind of keep you alive and dish out some damage, which is, I think, even optional. You can miss this one completely. And then you've got a shadow step for a dodge and a sneak attack. And even my favorite, which is a little useless because if you get attacked while you're trying to pluck one of your hairs and activate it, it just doesn't work. But it's your Naruto shadow clones. As an anime head, I had no idea how many characters like Goku and Naruto were inspired by Sun Wukong. So that's a really cool plus there. On top of the magic, you're able to use the D-pad to switch your stances. And what happens here is you get a different heavy attack based on your stance. What I did was I focused on the first one because I thought smash attack was kind of the best one. And the more points you're putting into it, the more passives you unlock. I did mess around with the other ones like Pillar, where you climb up your staff and dodge damage. No one can attack you when you're at the top. And then you drop down on the enemy and hurt them. But I found that it was a little too inconsistent, and getting attacked while you're up on that staff just drains your stamina. Thrust, I think, is also a really good one, which I switched to on and off because of the reach that you're getting with the attack. Once these are unlocked, you can literally just hit the D-pad, switch them up mid-fight. Speaking of bosses, I think they are a little fair. I think as a Souls vet myself, I didn't really struggle too much on some of the bosses. Some were annoying, and some do have these annoying features where they basically grab you and one-shot you. But I mean, other than that, I don't think that difficulty is a really huge negative factor that should hold anyone back from playing this game. Don't get me wrong, it's not an easy game. There is some frustration. You are going to die quite a bit. You're going to learn from your mistakes and come back. But I mean, it's not an Elden Ring. It's not like a Dark Souls. So I wouldn't even say this one is Lies of P difficult, which, by the way, never reviewed it here, but I did play it. Another awesome game you guys should try out. As for sound, the game doesn't really have memorable music in my opinion, and the voice acting for me was just okay. I mean, I went with the dub, so that's probably why, and I didn't really mind because I watch a lot of things dubbed, but when I did hear some of it in Chinese, those voice actors are clearly trying a lot harder than the dub, so do with that what you want to do. It's whatever your preference is. Something weird is that your character doesn't really talk. He's kind of the mute, protagonist, and people do point that out, but sound isn't really a lot that I could talk about here. I mean, there's a little bit of music here and there that kind of fits the theme, but a lot of the game is weirdly in silence, and even the staff impact sound doesn't feel like it hits hard enough. It kind of makes you feel like you're literally beating someone with a weak stick at times. I didn't really feel like that sound effect was that good. It just felt a little muted and kind of makes the combat feel a little inconsequential if you ask me. Besides that con, there are some other issues that I do want to talk about that I think really hold this game back. I mentioned the story not being that engaging, which is honestly a bummer since the world is so beautiful and inviting. Mobs of enemies at times just feel like they're kind of just littered around and kind of weird distractions on the way to a boss versus actually like enemies that live and breathe in that world that are just living their lives until you show up, like how in other games are. This time it just feels like they're kind of just like literally sprinkled in to kind of just give you something to fight on the way. My biggest issue though is the lack of immersion that happens the second you think you can go somewhere but can't, which happens so many times. The amount of invisible walls in the game is just insane. I think so much of the environment is just inviting. It's asking for you to be exploring it. But the game turns into this weird trial and error of checking to see if the devs are letting me go there or not. I mean, I think a map, which is not in the game, would also be a lifesaver because, you know, you can at least find your way around and see where those invisible walls are and where kind of the edges of the map are. I think that would fix it 100%. Don't know why that's not included yet. I'm not sure what's happening with developers that just don't want to add maps to their games nowadays. It's like this weird taboo, but the game has been in development for like 9 years now. So it's a little weird stuff like this actually made it to the final version. I mean, it's not really like a quadruple A game, but it's done nothing but shatter records. So I'm hoping that the sequel, which I pray there is a sequel, will improve on this one. And I'd also love if that sequel was open world, by the way. The small gripes that I had with the game really aren't a big deal to me at all. I think that Black Myth Wukong exceeded my expectations and is honestly so far my favorite game released this year, if we're not counting the insane DLC Shadow of the Erd Tree. The game has just broken every Steam record and has become a worldwide phenomenon for good reason. I think that for the first title for these devs, I think it's a wild success that hopefully leads to an even better second game, whether it's going to be in this world or something else. My score for Black Myth Wukong is a 9 out of 10. I think the game is a great time. That was actually a lot longer than I thought it would be. The environments are gorgeous, but I feel like they're a little shallow. The combat is fun, as well as the boss battles. Progression from start to finish does feel amazing, especially as you get the secrets that are in the chapters. I really like this one. I think it's definitely in the running for Game of the Year so far this year. And I do suggest you guys go out, buy this one at full price if you can. It's definitely worth the money. That's it for my Black Myth Wukong review. Let me know in the comments if you guys have played this one yet, what you guys think of it. If you did make it this far, don't forget to hit the like button if you like the video and help us out with a subscribe. I'm going to be trying to hopefully review Star Wars Outlaws next. I haven't heard good things about it, but I do want to try it. And honestly, for the Ubisoft Plus thing, I could at least try it out and just see where it's at. But I will be jumping on Space Marine when that comes out next as kind of like a channel update for you guys. Thanks again for making it this far, and I'll see you guys on the next one.